Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, October 22nd, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today, as always, we have a great number of feasts. First off, the Abbot Orsini tells us that they celebrate Our Lady of the Underground, also known as Our Lady of the Vault. That's half a league from Grand Cairo. It is held by tradition that the Blessed Virgin lived some years in this subterranean chapel. If you know what a league is and you know where Grand Cairo is, I suppose you can figure out where this is located. Obviously in Egypt after the flight into Egypt. Also in Italy, we have the Madonna della Neve, which another site tells us that it's also in Torre Annunziata, Napoli, Campania in Italy, right? It's kind of interesting because, as you know, Our Lady of the Snow, that's what it means, is the devotion to which St. Mary Major is dedicated. So one of our sources says it's interesting that Our Lady of the Snows would be invoked as the heavenly patroness and liberatrice, as they say, the liberatrix, against the flames and fires of Vesuvio. That's Vesuvius, the mountain, the volcano, right? And we're told that this miraculous liberation, which is the most impressive in the story of the city, took place on October 22nd, hence why we celebrate it today, 1822, right? Where it seemed like the days had returned that buried the city of Pompeii. But interestingly enough, the lava from Vesuvius stopped flowing outside the town, as if it were just miraculously prevented from entering into the town. The reason why this image, because it's actually an image, is known as Our Lady of the Snow, is because it was found, and it says here literally, it was fished out in a net by some fishermen from Torre Annunziata, on August 5th, 1354. And that is, if you're aware, the celebration of Our Lady of the Snows. Also today, they celebrate the Inner Life of Mary. That's a celebration with the Sulpician religious order. It's like their internal private feast. And also they celebrate today Maria Santissima, Mary Most Holy, in Capo di Orlando, and that's in Messina in Sicily in Italy. So the story of that devotion goes that on the night of October 22nd, that's why we celebrate today, 1598, the Raffa brothers were guarding the castle on Cape Orlando when they heard a noise. They saw a man sound a horn and run away, leaving behind a small box, which is, sketchy, and that would make you worried. So inside of it, the watchman found a statuette of the Madonna and Child. It was 2 years later, on October 22nd, 1600, the image was installed in a new sanctuary on the mountain, where for years Our Lady watched over the cape and protected it from earthquakes, storms, and yes, pirates. Unfortunately, in 1925, after the original stolen, right, what do? A silver replica was made, and so the region celebrates October 22nd with a pilgrimage to the sanctuary and a procession through the streets. Again, that's Mary Most Holy in Capo di Orlando, Messina in Sicily. And so that's what we're celebrating today in the Marian world on October 22nd. For today's reading from True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we're continuing with part 2, in which he speaks on the most excellent devotion to Our Blessed Lady, or the perfect consecration to Jesus through Mary. And again, we're in section 1, in what consists the perfect consecration to Jesus by Mary, or through Mary, we could say. Again, we have this wonderful list that he's going through. It's got 3 points. We read point 1 yesterday, which is 123. And then at point 124, where we'll start today, he starts with the second point of this list. A person who is thus voluntarily consecrated and sacrificed to Jesus Christ through Mary can no longer dispose of the value of any of his good actions. All he suffers, all he thinks, all the good he says or does belongs to Mary, in order that she may dispose of it according to the will of her Son and his greatest glory, without, however, that dependence prejudicing in any way the obligation of the state we may be in at the present, or may be placed in the future. For example, without prejudicing the obligations of a priest, who, by his office or otherwise, ought to apply the satisfactory or impetitory value of the Holy Mass to some private person. For we make the offering of this devotion only according to the order of God and the duties of our state. That's an interesting point too. Is what does Saint Louis de Montfort mean by that? And he says, well, we give Mary all of our our good actions. We give her all these things, and sometimes people will say like, well, then I can't. My job as a priest is that I need to, apply the mass for this soul or for this particular intention, or we can even think religious who consecrate themselves. For instance, a monastery that has a particular intention, like, I need to pray for the conversion of the pagans. That's the intention of our monastery. And you're like, well, if I consecrate myself to Mary, then I can't do that. It's all going to Mary. It's like, no, she knows, right? So it's not like it's going to cause problems or interfere with that. Obviously, Mary knows everything, and she knows what our obligations of state are, and therefore Jesus Christ, will help us to fulfill those. He won't impede them. At point 125, we have the third point of this list. He says, we consecrate ourselves at one and the same time to the Most Holy Virgin and to Jesus Christ. To the Most Holy Virgin, as to the most perfect means which Jesus Christ has chosen, whereby to unite himself to us, and us to him. And to our Lord as to our last end, to whom we owe all we are as our Redeemer and our God. So again, what is he emphasizing in this point? Remember back in the beginning of the text, he said, well, devotion should help us to be united to Jesus Christ. That's the whole point of it. If it doesn't unite us to Jesus Christ, it's not true devotion. And so he says, okay, but Jesus Christ Jesus Christ chose to unite himself to us by means of Mary, right? And so by means of Mary, we choose to unite ourselves to him. It's just perfectly logical. But again, we go through Mary to Jesus, right? So this devotion, it says we consecrate ourselves at one and the same time to the Most Holy Virgin and to Jesus Christ, because the two are inseparable. We go to Jesus through Mary.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our Marian podcast. As St. John Paul II teaches us, from Mary we learn to love Christ, her Son, the Son of God. Through her intercession, may we grow ever closer to him. We encourage you to share this with a loved one or friend and help spread our devotion to Mary. Thank you, and God bless.